there is a stat that says the average person will waste an entire year of their life or more looking for lost or misplaced items.
Welcome to the Carey Nieuwhof Leadership Podcast on YouTube. Today, Andrew Mellon, and we're going to talk about a radical approach to personal organization and office communication. If you are wondering what the relationship is between your physical environment and your leadership, well, I think you're going to love this. And yeah, my OCD shows through, but I can vouch for this stuff. It actually works. Okay, like, subscribe, leave a comment to join the conversation. And we're doing something really special. We're going to give away a copy of Andrew Mellon's book, Unstuff Your Life, to 5 lucky winners. So to enter the giveaway, just leave a comment below saying, I need to clear my space. Okay, when you listen to this, if you feel like you need to clean your space, like I did, you'll want to get this. And I've used the system that Andrew and I are going to talk about. It really works. And I just cleaned up my office, like totally got a minimalist desk again, and it feels so much better. So we're going to jump into that in just a minute. But now a word from today's partners, and then we'll dive into the conversation. This episode is brought to you by the Church Network. Hey, if you're feeling overwhelmed in church operations, you are not alone. For over 70 years, the Church Network has been a trusted resource for leaders navigating the complexities of church administration. This summer, don't just survive, learn to thrive. Join the Church Network July 15th through 18th in Omaha, Nebraska for their annual conference. It's packed with more than 50 practical breakout sessions, an extensive trade show, and insights from leaders like Pastor Zach Zender, Brad Hill, Erica Cole, and Tim Hodges. So here's the truth. You weren't meant to go it alone. Build real connection, grow your expertise, and find the support you need to lead with confidence. Learn more and register today at thechurchnetwork.com/conference. Today's episode is brought to you by Subsplash. You know, while social media platforms like Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube provide your church with a broad audience reach, they're not designed to actually foster the deep, ongoing engagement that connection requires. And the other thing is, these are rented spaces. They're fueled by big tech algorithms, which you have no control over, and they've got one goal in mind: to keep users scrolling constantly, serving new, unfiltered content accompanied by paid advertisements. So the problem is, that's one of the reasons Subsplash exists, all right? That is the problem they're trying to solve, to give your church its own digital space to share your content with your community without distraction, without ads, and without questionable content. So you can join more than 20,000 churches and ministries that partner with Subsplash to own their digital space that cultivates belonging, deepens relationships, and naturally paves the way for discipleship. So go to subsplash.com/Carey, and you can schedule a quick, no obligation demo. You'll save $500 when you sign up. Andrew, welcome back.
Oh, I'm delighted to be here.
It's been a couple years. We had you back on in 2017. I went back into the archives. So some of our listeners will remember this conversation. And we picked up a whole bunch of new listeners since then.
Awesome.
And the world seems a lot more chaotic now than it did back in the golden days of 2017.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I wanted to start here, and this is sort of philosophical, but we're going to talk a lot about organization, because I believe organization is key to sanity, and sanity is something that is very difficult to preserve in leadership. So what is the relationship, in your view, to outer chaos and feeling chaotic on the inside? And we can talk about my office being a disaster to the world being a disaster. Take it wherever you want. But the relationship between outer chaos and inner peace, or the lack thereof.
Sure. I don't think it's a chicken or egg thing. And I think that your external world, if there's chaos there, is likely to create disturbation.
Yeah.
And if you're quiet and reflective, when you're quiet and reflective, the outer chaos will perhaps have less impact. Doesn't mean that it's not there. I think your ability to address it and work your way through it, if we start from the inside out, is always, if not always, almost always going to be a better choice. So if you can quiet yourself down, the external noise will be easier to address. And if you're agitated, external stimulation is only going to make you more agitated. So I think the calmer we can get you inside, the easier it will be to address the chaos outside, and also the easier it will be to be less impacted by external chaos.
Yeah.
I mean, the chaos is not going to go away, and if the ebbs and flows of chaos in the world, the Dalai Lama talks about this all the time. We don't have the perspective to be able to see the biggest picture of how things move. So in the moment, it feels critical, and it might in fact be critical. And if we can zoom out 100 years, 1,000 years, it might seem like a hiccup, but it feels totally acute and intense. And so I often rely on that to provide like a perspective hack. because when my face is pressed up against the glass, it feels intense all the time. So how do I get that 30,000 or 36,000 foot view? Breathe, reflect, pray, and quiet down, and then it just becomes a day. It becomes another day.
I find it a lot easier to feel inner peace when my outer world is organized.
Well,
if
no doubt.
I'm in chaos, that's probably a personality thing. But if there's chaos, I am not cool with it. Someone else's chaos, okay, I can deal with that. But if it's my chaos, I often have to clean up beforehand before I can really sit down and be still. If you had to identify one organizational habit, and this is what we're going to talk about, we're going to be like very practical, very tactile. How do you organize your stuff, right? Unstuff your life. If there was one organizational habit that predicts a leader's effectiveness, what would you say that is?
I was thinking about this. When I think about effective leadership, it's less about physical clutter, and it's more about mental clutter, and I think communication. It's really hard to follow somebody who's muddled,
yes,
and has not great communication. Often I think, and I work with people all the time on this, we're thinking all the things. A third of it comes out of our mouth, a quarter of it comes out of our mouth. We think we're speaking in complete sentences, but we're speaking in fragments. We think that there's context for what we're saying, but people have no idea because we have it all up here and it's not coming out. And I think that creates confusion in people that we're trying to lead, probably more than anything else. Precision, conciseness, not being cold and abrupt, but also pay attention to everything that's behind a but or because. Chances are it doesn't need to be there.
For the person who's like, why does this even matter? Why does this even matter? I mean, tell me why I would want to do this. What are the benefits that you see for your clients, for your readers, for your audience when they do this? What happens? Because what I'm interested in is clarity for leaders at work and simplicity for leaders at home. I think if you have that, you're going to lead better.
Sure. So there is a stat that says the average person will waste an entire year of their life or more looking for lost or misplaced items.
Wow.
So if you could have a year of your life, if you could live for a year longer, is that enough time to make it worth your while? Right? It seems if you've ever said there aren't enough hours in the day to get everything done, and you could recapture 5, 10, 15 minutes a day, every day for the remainder of your time on the planet, would that be an ROI that was worth employing two simple principles to know where everything is at a moment's glance, in a momentary need, that you could find whatever you were looking for, and you never had to, because let's be clear, there's the math of the time, Then there's the affect of the time, agitation, irritation, anxiety, overwhelm, stress. Those factors are beyond the simple math of the year that you're going to lose of your life. Now you're also going to diminish the quality of your life on top of it, based on the stress to your adrenal system and everything else, when you can't find what you need when you need it. So it would seem, on my side of the fence, it seems like a no-brainer that the ROI is self-evident. Hopefully that translates and people can see the value of knowing where things are. And going back to that, what I had just said earlier about the bandwidth, why take up any of your bandwidth having to remember where things are if you just place them in their home and it's a logical home and everybody knows where that home is? You don't really have to think about it again.
We redid our kitchen about a year after I had that interview. Well, most of our house, actually. We had a big renovation. And prior to that, I kept my wallets and keys in one of 2 or 3 places. It was either in the kitchen, it was upstairs in my bedroom, or it was in the coat I was wearing last night. And the amount of time that I would spend up and down the stairs, back and forth. Have you seen my keys? Did one of the kids take my keys? Where are my keys? They're always in the same place. And probably 5 times a year, yeah, we're ringing the bell. 5 times a year, Andrew, I think I might skip that. And then I got to go digging, and usually it's 2 minutes. But the amount of daily mental clutter and frustration, because that can set you off. If you didn't have a good sleep the night before, that can now the morning's ruined, right? So I'm with that. The other thing that really helped was I'm pretty fascinated by the whole self-storage movement that's going on right now. Do you want to, I don't know, I didn't ask you about this, but do you have stats on self-storage units? Like somebody told me 20 years ago, I should have invested in it, and they were right. I'd be a gazillionaire today. But would. It blows me away that we now rent extra space for things we don't use, sometimes for years.
Yeah. So the global self-storage market in 2024 was a $50.6 billion industry.
Wow.
So yeah, I will say, I mean, particularly given your line of work, because I have thought of investing in self-storage as well. And it feels akin to investing in tobacco companies. You know, I mean, it's you're taking advantage of other people's vulnerabilities and possibly profiting off of something that I would rather heal them from than profit from.
Now that's a good point.
It could be the reason that I'm not, an industrial baron. And at the same time, I sleep better knowing that I'm not, that I'm, again, part of the solution rather than profiting off the problem.
I mean, I don't want to name names, but I have people in my life who have hung on to things literally for 30 years saying, one day I'm going to use them.
Sure.
And now they're paying hundreds of dollars a month to store them just in case they use them. You could have bought the equipment you're storing 5 times over, 10 times over. Yeah. And, we live on a half acre. We're fortunate that way. Not like super rural, but rural enough.
Yep.
We have a 2,200 square foot house, 29 with the basement. Basement doesn't have a lot of storage. I have a 2-car garage that basically 2 cars barely fit into. And we built a shed. And I said to Tony, my wife, that's it. That's it. If we can't accommodate it here, we don't need it, or something else has to go.
Yeah.
And, so anything else on self-storage, like it is a highly profitable industry. It is one that it's still growing, isn't it?
So the average size of a self-storage unit is 56,900 square feet. For context, here in the US, a football field, like an American football field, 48,000 square feet.
So if the average is bigger than a football field.
Right. If you can imagine a stadium that you would go watch a pro ball team play in the US, smaller than the average self-storage facility.
And I get it. If you're moving and you need a place to dump your stuff for 4 months, or
renovating your home.
Yeah.
If you work, if you're like a traveling nurse or doctor, or you're on the road. There are times, and you don't have a permanent home. There are definitely times when it comes in handy, and it serves a purpose. As a deferred decision destination, it's a total money suck. And to your point, right? There was a woman. I was leading a workshop in Portland, Oregon, and there was a woman there. She lives in Oregon. She raised her family in New Orleans. Her grown daughter, lives in Amsterdam with her family. So she's grown enough that she has kids and a husband. Everything that was in that storage unit was her daughter's, essentially. Her daughter doesn't live in this country and has been out of the country for decades. And she has been spending money every month on these things just because of her feelings. And she started to, during this workshop, she started to cry, not unusual. And my suggestion to her was, you would save more money and be happier. Fly your daughter back to New Orleans, meet her there, go through the storage unit on a weekend, ship whatever she wants to Amsterdam, and dispatch the rest of it. And she was so overwhelmed and freaked out about the prospect of that. I mean, it really impacted her. And 3 weeks later, I got an email from her saying, I feel like a 500-pound weight has been lifted off my back. I took your suggestion. I flew my daughter in. In 3 days, we went through that storage space. I packed up basically 2 boxes and shipped it to her. Everything else went away. I cut that cord, and my daughter's happy. I'm happy. And that steady drip on my pocketbook is completely gone. And she feels, the weight off of her was significant.
Well, and I appreciate your compassion and your pastoral heart on that, because this is an emotional issue for people.
Totally.
Right? There's shame associated with it. Like,
Guilt,
I can't park.
Shame.
Mm-hmm. What percentage, again, I'm giving you a pop quiz. I didn't tell you this was going to be on the test, Andrew. Do you have any idea what percentage of people park their vehicles in their garage? I think I read it's a minority, isn't it?
I definitely think it's not. It's definitely less than half. I don't have that stat.
I think it was 74% I read cannot park their car in their garage. And I was
one of them.
One of those people. And then in 2020, I reread your principles, and I'm like, well, I got nothing to do. I can't fly anywhere. So gutted the whole thing, put some ceiling storage units in.
Awesome.
Just a couple for some totes, Christmas lights, that kind of stuff, right?
Yep.
Summer stuff for the lake. And one in, one out. And both cars have been parked in the garage for 5 years now.
That's
and
awesome.
that feels...
I'm going to ring the bell
so
for that.
Good. We're going to ring the bell again. There we go. That just made me so happy. And then if it doesn't fit in the garage, we can't handle it, And then once a year, I kind of go through every tote, make sure that it's all current, and then we go on from there. So again, not perfect, but so much better, because I used to think of it as the garage of shame. Speaking of emotions, I'd go out there. What do you do with kids' stuff? Because that's very emotional. So I want to tackle that from 2 perspectives. One, when your kids go to college. So my kids are beyond the college years. So we were Storage Depot, dad and mom's free storage for a number of years. And then I got a little bit ruthless when they hit their early 20s. And it's like, the stuff's going. Either you deal with it or I'm dealing with it. So, I always tell my friends, the good news is we raised our kids to be independent. The bad news is we raised our kids to be independent. So, they're gone. Like, right. They're out of the house. And, they know now, like, if they're in a move, it's like, can I just store my motorcycle here for a month? I'm like, totally. For a month, no problem, but doesn't live here. What advice do you have? Is that like being a draconian parent? Feel free to counsel me on that.
No. Again, when they're grown and they are living independent and they are not heading back, right? Stuff happens. People lose jobs. There's times when they might come home to spend some time, and if they are successful enough to live independently away from home, and there's some consistency there, I'm right there with you that the communication is, we're going to set a timer, and you've got 6 months to come deal with it. And, on the 181st day, if you haven't dealt with it, I'll deal with it. And we're not going to discuss my choices with your things. They're your things for the first 6 months, then they're my things. And I'm going to serve me and my space at that point.
Yeah, and we did a version of that too. And by the way, I should say, now that they're independent and launched and employed and fortunate to be able to live on their own, I know that's not everybody's story.
Right.
I now say to them, now that you're out, anytime you want to come back, that's fine. Like, I just had to get you launched, right? But if you had 6 months where you're like, hey, I don't have a place, or we're between this, or something devastating happens, you're welcome back for a season. We're real happy to do that, but I just wanted them launched. So.
Yeah, totally. And so I think the journey is really, when you've got toddlers, you get a pass. You just have to pay attention. If you're telling yourself, I'm saving this for them for when they don't want your grandmother's china, they don't want your grandmother's silver, they're not going to entertain that way. They don't want your grandmother's photo albums.
This is shocking.
Natives. They are not going to sit in a window box with a cup of tea and flip through old photo albums of people they've never met. It's not how they're wired. So if you want the kids to have those photos, you need to scan them and make a digital photo album and give them that. But they are not going to lug around boxes of old photographs, particularly if they're people that they've never met.
I want to be careful so we don't identify it, but we have someone close to us who wasn't a hoarder, but kept everything. And over 8 decades, it really piles up. And it was left until the 11th hour, never dealt with. And it was one weekend, the kids showed up. And at that point, there were some really valuable things.
Sure.
But the clock was ticking, ran out of time. It all ended up in a big bin and got hauled away, which was really a shame. But you think this stuff has value, I can't get rid of it. And probably one of my biggest meta lessons from you has been clutter is deferred decision, right? It's a leadership issue. Can you explain, because along the way, it was kind of like, well, somebody will use this someday, or somebody will want this someday, or I'm going to go over this at some point in my life. And then your life is over before you know it. You've got dumpsters full of stuff that is of no value to anybody. But that idea, even I've got something here, I'm like, okay, I'm talking to Andrew, but I got my gimbal and I bought it a couple months ago, and it kind of sits here on my desk because it's in and out of my bag, but it's got to go into that drawer in the back behind me. It can't just sit on my desk. So clutter is deferred decision. Do you want to talk about that?
Sure. When you set something down, chances are you've got a good story. I'm going to put this away later. I don't have the time now, but I will, and I will deal with it later. And you mean it when you say it. You don't think you're lying when you say it. And then you set down something on top of it, and you tell yourself, oh, these things live together. This is actually a good strategy. I'll put them all away at the same time because they go to the same place. And then you end up with piles and stacks and bags and bins of things that are waiting to be dealt with in this undefined future time, when you perceive that you're going to have all this unstructured time available to you. When have you ever had a day that didn't have demands on your attention?
Right. Oh, that week down the road where I'm going to have nothing to do and nobody needs anything from me, then I'm going to go through it. Yeah,
right,
never happens.
Exactly. Yeah. On a rainy day, I'm going to set some time aside and do this. On the rainy day, you're thinking, it's a cozy, wet day. I think we'll build a fire, watch a movie, and spend some time together. Or we'll run some errands because nobody will be out. On the beautiful sunny day, as soon as the weather clears up, I'll do it. And on that day, you're like, I want to go to the beach, or I want to go golfing, or I think we'll we'll have a picnic. We'll go do something, and we'll wait for the next rainy day. And we just keep punting it down the field over and over again. Those are the deferred decisions. If it's important enough to keep in your life, then it's important enough to prioritize. And if it isn't, then it would be so much better to just let yourself off the hook, stop lying to yourself. And I say that with love, right? I mean, it's not like you're a liar, but the average adult tells 200 lies a day, and 2/3 of them are probably just to ourselves, just the garbage conversations we have with ourselves. And
like,
a third
I'll deal with that later. That would be an example of that lie. Or, oh, I don't have a place for this. You do, actually. Or go make one.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And if you don't, then maybe it doesn't need to live in your life.
Yeah,
right?
What are you doing with it?
If you can't find a home for it, either something that has a home needs to become homeless and be released so it can now take that home, or this thing that you're holding on to because of a story that it might come in handy someday, for who, when, in what application. If you can't be specific enough to identify where and when you might use it or who might benefit from it, right? We replaced the toaster. I've got the old toaster. It's a perfectly good toaster, but the new one has 4 slots. This one only had 2. So I don't want to throw it away. I want to give it to a good home. Of course you do. The good home is any home that isn't yours. You can take it to a thrift store. You can put it up on, Free Cycle or Nextdoor or OfferUp or Buy Nothing. There's plenty of people who are looking for a toaster right now who would be delighted to take your toaster. Keeping it in the garage just in case. You're not going to have a toast emergency. You're not going to need the toaster.
Toast emergency. There's a new phrase I want to keep. There's a sunk cost bias to this too, isn't there?
Yeah.
What role does sunk cost bias play in our attachment to goods? And I'm talking about goods that cost $1 through to thousands of dollars. But it's like, I paid good money for that 4-slot toaster. And even though somebody gave me a 2-slot toaster for Christmas, I can't get rid of that 4-slot toaster because that cost me $54 or whatever toasters cost now. So what role does sunk cost bias play in all of this?
For anyone who has a relationship with money that has some charge around it, either you grew up without a lot of it, or you have something around money. This becomes one of your triggers and one of your 200 lies that I will totally get rid of it as long as I can get my money for it.
Right.
Well, you've already spent the money. You either got good use out of it, you got okay use out of it, you got no use out of it. What is your time worth? If you bill it $50 an hour and the item is worth $50, if it takes you more than an hour to liquidate it, you're at a net loss. So if it really is money and not your feelings, if we just stay on the objective math side of the equation, you're running at a loss. So you could tell yourself, I just want to harvest the money back out of it, but there's diminishing returns in reality. The story is, I can, in 15 minutes, I'll get my money out of it. Well, maybe. The only way that you'll probably get your money out of it in 15 minutes is if you donate it and take it off your taxes, if it's a legitimate tax deduction. Otherwise, or if you could gift it to somebody and it would substitute for you actually having to pull money out of your pocket and buy them a gift, then you would net the money back. Short of that, if it's going to take you X amount of hours to liquidate it and it's only worth Y amount of dollars, it's a very simple cost benefit analysis to figure out, are you going to make money or are you going to lose money? And if we think of that idea, it's akin to the law of attraction and that kind of stuff, where if money is actually fluid and it's not about holding the money, but money provides us the ability to do things, experience things, share things, and it's not about accumulating it and locking it up, then you got the use out of it that you got the use out of it. If you want it to be different in the future, be more mindful about the things you consume, be a different steward of both your financial resources and then the material resources that you create from those financial resources, and buy less so that you have less, you have less of these things to engage your time and your energy with, or treat them like a loose garment and allow them to flow through your life with less attachment. They're the two different sides of that spectrum. The one is it's loose and it just comes and goes and I'm not attached to it and I'm not keeping score, or I'm super keeping score, in which case you probably need to play fewer games so that you can keep score tightly and not be lopsided.
Yeah. Well, and the other thing too, if you're worried about money, you're so right. The number of duplicate purchases I've made in the last 8 years since I put your system into work in our home, in my life, is greatly reduced. The Phillips head screwdriver, you think, oh yeah, I know I have one, I can't find it. Well, if you know where it is every single time, you're not going to buy two. One will do you for life, right? Which is awesome. I want to talk about emotional attachment. So we did, and we deferred on this until literally a few months ago. But that Christmas break, last Christmas break, between Christmas and New Year's, where you have all those days where you don't know what day it is.
Right.
We had 5 totes of memorabilia, everything going back to my wife and I's childhood, which we didn't have a lot of, being born in the 60s, 70s kind of thing, raised in the 70s. People didn't hang on to a lot of stuff then. It's a lot more now. So we had a few things, and then all of our kids, like 3rd grade artwork, report cards, Sam did really big in sports. Jordan did really big in music and academics. And they're both strong in numerous areas. So we had all of that stuff. And that was the hardest part for me, honestly, of your whole system. And we talked about it on the last episode. And I remember you were saying, your kids are not that trophy. Your kids are not that piece of art. Like, that is not your relationship. But I felt really bad about it. And we had talked to the kids about it. Hey, do you want this tote? We don't want the tote. It's like, okay, well, you sure it's got your 3rd grade artwork in it? I don't want it. Like, all right. So my wife and I sat here in my office and we just went through all the totes. It was an afternoon. I mean, we saw her teddy bear from when she was 5 years old. The teddy bear, bye-bye, Teddy. Teddy's gone now. I had stuff, couple things I kept from when I was a kid that were sentimental, but they're going to go to use. And then literally we took 5 totes down to 1. So we have 1 single tote of our kids' childhood. And I figured that's okay. We needed to free up some storage space. My wife took the art that we thought was the most representative and the pictures that were most representative, put them in some scrapbooks, yearbooks she had kept for the kids, and a few other things. And then I had a ton of my university papers, like literally papers I would turn in for my various degrees. And I sorted that all out to a half dozen. And I thought, if I ever retire in 20 years, I'm going to go through those and see, or, in my 70s, way down the road, I'll take a look at what was I thinking back then and how did that become a through line? But it's literally a handful. It all, kids, my wife, me, fits in 1 tote now. That was hard. But dude, once it was done, it felt so good. I didn't want to think about the big garbage bags that we filled up and the recycling bins that we filled up. That kind of went to the curb and that was it. So that's done. Any comments beyond that on, the interviewer's becoming the teacher here, but I'm also, as you can tell, an evangelist now, Andrew, for your system. I think it's fantastic. Break that down for people who are like, yeah, I've been thinking about that and I don't want to do that because I have 10 totes or, a whole room full of stuff from when my kids were younger that I don't want to get rid of.
Well, first of all, congratulations.
Thank you.
That's great, right?
Yeah. Ring the bell. There we are.
That's awesome. And your dad's not the clock. Your grandmother's not the teacup. Your kid's not the trophy. And even, you're fortunate, right? No tragedies, no loss of children.
No, we're very fortunate.
Those unspeakable tragedies where people lose their kids, and the stuff is all that remains on one level, on one plane, and the kids those things are not are not the memories. It's the most palpable way to access those memories when the grief is the most acute and new. Over time, it's particularly intense, I think, when it's a child, but any loss is a loss. A parent, a sibling, a good friend, a partner, a child, a pet, right? So recognizing the distinction between the previous owner of the thing and the thing itself is a reflective process. There is no one way to do that.
Right.
It's unique to you and your emotional needs and how willing you are to go to the place you need to go to get clarity.
Mhm.
And that's different for everybody. Some people don't want to go deep.
Yeah.
It freaks them out. They're uncomfortable. They don't trust that they'll be safe and okay if they go there. I mean, all the things. And I'm not a psychologist, right? I mean, I'm not a mental health practitioner. So I can't counsel people on that, on the clinical side of it, but on the mechanical side of it, on the process, it takes as long as it takes for you to sit with something and get clarity. And it is what I would say is the ground rules or the best practices are to remember the object isn't the person. And if you are delegating the responsibility of keeping the memories alive to an object, you're abdicating your own responsibility. The object could fail. There could, I mean, the fires in Los Angeles, the hurricanes in Florida, the tornadoes in the middle of the country, right? I mean, stuff happens. So relying on an inanimate object to do your heavy lifting is a bit, I don't want to say irresponsible with judgment, but you're abdicating your responsibility. If they're really that important to you, then find a way to keep them alive in your conversations with other people, in your experiences. That's the way to keep memory palpable and current, not delegating it to a teacup or a piece of artwork. And I think, if you've got artwork from your kids and you think it's good rather than just a scribble in an old, National Geographic with a Sharpie while they were watching, Barney or something on TV, that could be recycled, but the artwork, frame it or put it in a scrapbook. If it means something to you, it also helps to not assume that it means something to somebody else. So again, don't lie to yourself that I'm keeping it for them, because they're quite explicit. I don't want the tote. Whatever's in that tote, that's about you and mom, not about me. When you leave, it's leaving. I'm not bringing it into my house. I'm glad you had a childhood. I don't really want your teddy bear. It doesn't have any meaning to me. I didn't want my teddy bear. I certainly don't want yours.
Yeah. No, I think that's really good. And it was for us, we haven't lost a child, but we have people close to us who have. And I can't imagine the pain that would bring going through item after item.
Right.
But for us, it was a very nostalgic afternoon. It was fun. There were a couple of tears. There was like, oh, I forgot about that. That was so cool. And now it's all manageable. And the kids took a couple of things. And that was it. That was it. It was good. So
the other thing that I would say about it is, particularly if there's been a loss, the glass half empty is your loss. The glass half full is not exactly paying it forward, but in the same way of donating an organ, here is a way to the best parts of them or the useful parts of them are out in the world. They are not here, but this is part of their legacy. So whether you created a scholarship in their name or just somebody got to wear their sweatshirt or their sneakers or use their tennis racket, it's still, they're out in the world. And in that big, mysterious ebb and flow of human experience, it continues.
Yeah. No, the other thing that is helpful, I like that. My wife and I, we're both public speakers. So I wish we weren't, because I'd be wearing the same stuff I was 20 years ago. It doesn't bother me. Back in the day, it was simple. You have 5 shirts, super simple. Well, now you can't wear the same stuff on stage over and over again. So sometimes you end up with a fairly expensive, not worn out wardrobe. And we found a charity nearby called Dress for Success.
Oh yeah,
And
that's a great organization.
Oh,
Love
they're beyond this community. They're a franchise.
Cool. Oh, they're all over they're all over. They're certainly all over North America. They might be all over the world.
So explain what they do, because this was so cool to be able to drop off suits and expensive clothing, knowing that it would go to a good cause, not just get used as a Halloween costume at a thrift store.
Yeah. So they repurpose clothing for folks who are re-entering the job market and need professional clothing, and for whatever reason, whether it's formerly incarcerated or just down on your luck and underemployed, perhaps displaced or homeless, anybody who needs professional looking clothing. Can go shopping at Dress for Success, and when I say shopping, it doesn't involve money, right? I mean, they make things available to folks so that they can have a professional wardrobe and go back out into the job market and not have that be a stumbling block, that they have, that they can't dress for the role that they want, and they can't present themselves in a way that, while we wish that people didn't judge other people on their appearances, they do.
Yeah, they do.
So we want to arm everybody who walks into an interview or any sort of professional situation in garments that are not going to snag somebody's attention and think like, oh, that looks tattered or that looks worn or old, and maybe they're not a good candidate because they don't look together.
Yes,
that neutralizes that, so that hopefully we can focus on their merits and their skill set rather than their presentation. It
gives them a level playing field, right? All things being considered, your clothes aren't shabby. You're not going in there with holes in your shirt, and you can make a go of it. Yeah. So I want to just rehearse the framework. So everything in one place. So we had spices in 2 places in the kitchen and a reserve in the pantry down in the basement. And we consolidated all of those, literally got little bottles off Amazon. It was like $30-$40 with a label on them. All the spices are now in one spot. It's super easy, all alphabetized. It's anal retentive person's dream. I love it. Fantastic. And we've done that with almost everything in our house. So this is where the pictures live. This is where the albums live. This is where the books. The exception is books. We have, actually, you want to talk about books? Let me put a pin in that and we'll come back to it. So like with like. So this is where we keep the cleaning supplies, not all over the house. This is where we keep whatever, right? So we do that. Then you've got everything in one place, one in, one out. That is, if you get something new, the old goes out. If you buy new cinnamon, the old cinnamon might be a year or 2 old. Pitch it, start with the new so you don't end up with a reservoir. Same with your clothing is probably the best example. You bought some new jeans. The old jeans get donated or relegated to the paint. And then what was the third one again? I'm just blanking.
So one home for everything, like with like, something in, something out.
Yeah. So when that happens, you've worked with thousands of clients, maybe more. What happens to people? What happens to their life?
Freedom. I mean, real freedom. They say it all the time. We're right now in the middle of, we teach these 10-week programs called the Unstuff Your Life system. Yeah. And we're just last night, I was teaching auxiliary spaces was the module that we were teaching. So that's attics, basements, garages, offsite storage, auxiliary spaces like sheds and things like that. So we were just in that module. That's why I had that stat on the $50 billion a year, because I literally just taught it last night. Already, I think we're 3 weeks into the program, and the mindset shifts that these folks are having is tremendous. And they're talking about the freedom that they're experiencing in their life as a result of not having to waste time, having fewer things to manage. And we can't go back and recapture the time that you've spent. But going forward, you're just unencumbered. It really is there's just less to manage. And so you have the free time to do whatever you want with it. And I, again, as a coach, as a thought leader, I don't have an agenda over what is a better use of your time. If you want to coach your grandkids' soccer team, awesome. You want to cure cancer, awesome. You want to volunteer at a soup kitchen, great. You want to spend more time with your wife, great. There is no better use of the time than what is aligned with your values and brings meaning and happiness to you. I'm not the arbiter of value in that sense. I want you to have the time to do whatever you want to do with it. I don't care what it is. What I do care about is that let's get the obstacles, the physical, the mental, emotional, spiritual obstacles out of your way so that you're very clear at that point that there are no more excuses or explanations. So then if you decide, actually, I thought I wanted to cure cancer, but really what I want to do is lay in a hammock and read a book. Great. Now you know that. Instead of tormenting yourself saying, God, if I only got my stuff together, I could go back to school and cure cancer. And now you're clear. In the time that I have left, I really want to read, 100 great books, spend more time with my family, and not make a mess.
Mm-hmm.
That's noble. That's great. Now you have clarity. Instead of, there are so many people, I think, spend so much time between their potential. And, unfortunately, many of us got that in elementary school, right? In grade school, not living up to his potential, not living up to her potential. Thank you. And I think it just set up a pattern of unrealistic expectations based on somebody else's evaluation, and then we feel crappy.
Yeah. For me, probably the biggest difference for leaders who are wondering, do I really want to do this? Because it's going to take you some time up front. And you said, I think the minimum is 20 minutes. I'm going to do a drawer, 15 minutes. Yeah. So 15 minutes, I'm going to tackle the junk drawer. You can get a lot done in 15 minutes, but it's honestly, if you've got a disorder, like for me, it took days. And I just took my summer vacation, took a couple of days and just went at it deep. But the maintenance is easy. Like I always say it's easier to keep a clean car clean. If you got a filthy car, that's going to take you a while. If you just need to quickly wash it down and give it a light vacuum, you can do that in half an hour. It's not that hard. It's easier to keep stuff organized. What it's done for me over the last 8 years is leadership is hard, okay? It's just hard. And you've always got stuff. I know every leader I talk to has trouble shutting the laptop. It's like, how am I going to solve this problem? I really need to let that person go, but I don't want to let that person go, I walk into my shed, looks like a bomb went off. I'm like, and I got that to deal with. And then I go into my garage and I'm like, and I got that to deal with. Then I'm trying to find the cinnamon and I got that to deal with. And it becomes overwhelming. And now when I go into the shed, I'm like, I know exactly where that is. In fact, after this, we're selling a car today. I know where the floor mats are. There's no guess. I know exactly where they are because they've been in the same place for the last 7 years. And I'm just going to go take them out, put them in the vehicle, make sure that they're there when the person picks up the car that we're selling today. I know exactly where my shovels are. I know. So when I walk into the garage, I feel good. When I walk into the shed, when I walk into the basement, when I walk into the kitchen, when I walk into where my stuff is, I'm like, I know exactly where that is. And it's like, for me, one less thing I have to worry about. And now I can focus on the stuff that actually is complex because it's supposed to be complex. My leadership or my writing or my speaking or my interview prep. Does that resonate at all? Do you want to nuance that? For me, that's what it buys me.
Of course. Failure breeds failure. Success breeds success. And so when you are feeling overwhelmed, it becomes a pile-on. I experienced this just last night in the bathtub. I was trying to get ready for bed, and I thought about one thing that I was upset about. And that led me to start to think about other places where I'm disappointed or frustrated, where things aren't happening the way I want to. And I had to mechanically interrupt myself because I recognized that this was going to be a problem for me going to sleep. Because now I was just piling on all the grievances and the disappointments and the upsets. Whereas if I flip it over, I mean, not to say that any of those things weren't true or accurate, and nothing that I can do about them at 10 o'clock at night in a bathtub.
Yeah.
So instead, pivoting to all of that is true, and I do want to get a good night's sleep. So instead, what I'm going to do is actually, I'm going to do a little gratitude. I'm going to do the reverse, and I'm just going to start to list what actually is working to quiet my mind down, quiet my heart down, get myself ready for bed, and not get it into that agitated state. So I think that building off of what you're saying is we don't, there's enough to do on a daily basis. These kinds of things, the life administration things that we can always hack and make simpler and more direct so that there's less friction, because the big things are going to require our attention.
Yes.
And what we will often tell ourselves, again, one of the 200 lies is, I'm going to get all this little stuff out of the way, and then I'm going to have this big unstructured time where I can do my big work. It doesn't work that way. You want to do the big work because that is important. And if the little stuff is either not annoying you because it doesn't exist, or because you have an ability to put it in perspective and know that in 15 minutes a day, I can knock that out. I don't need to do that before I can work on this paper for an hour. The one thing I want to say about the 15 minutes is, if you're neurodivergent, if you have ADHD, or you have some challenges staying focused, find the sweet spot. If that's 3 minutes, 5 minutes, 6 minutes, 2 minutes, you can get a tremendous amount done in 2 minutes if you're working uninterrupted without distractions. So the 15-minute as a benchmark is not set in stone. There are plenty of people who, there's a woman who's a graduate of our Unstuff Your Life System program. Her name's Sylvia Pettigrew. Sylvia, I mean, I don't expect
I know her. That's strange. Yeah. Okay, the name sounds familiar.
That would be funny if you do know Sylvia. Sylvia, single mom, working 2 full-time jobs, managed to completely declutter her basement in 7 minutes a day on her lunch break between those 2 jobs.
That's amazing.
So single mom, 2 full-time jobs, 7 minutes a day, and reclaimed a basement that used to be open the door, throw it down the stairs, don't look, and just, it was a huge pile of chaos, and excavated it, turned it into a rumpus room so that her and her son could watch movies and hang out together, play video games. She built a home office down there, and it went from being useless space to one of the most used spaces. And she was so successful at it that then her aunt flew her out to St. Louis to do that to her garage, because she had seen the progress that Sylvia had made, right? And so the story is, I don't have enough time. And the reality is, in as few as 7 minutes a day, you can completely reclaim a space.
I think the other thing leaders might find satisfying, at least I do, like I went out before lunch today and cleaned the SUV we're selling. And it's one of the only things, I think, why do I like clean cars so much? It's one of the only things in my life that goes from start to finish complete. It was dirty, it was clean, half an hour later, it's done. The same with storing things. It's like the drawer I organized last year is still organized today. And leadership is never that simple. Leadership is, when are you done with people? You're not. When are you done with advancing your mission? You're not. So if you have those little wins, that frees up bandwidth and clarity to say, okay, I am good at something, I can get that done. So you have updated Unstuff Your Life, because in the 10 plus years since it was written, 14. Now we have digital clutter. So I want to at least touch on that, but that is a big deal. Like, digital clutter for people used to be, Facebook, Twitter, and then Instagram came along. It's like 3 media platforms. Now we're on 12. Like, you got so much to do. You've got Slack and Asana open, and you're in Chrome and, Riverside to shoot this podcast, but it's also recording the audio separately. And I've got all those technical settings. Like, digital clutter has really advanced in the last 10 years. So what are some of your tips or advice for digital clutter?
I would encourage listeners to make sure that your digital organization mirrors your physical organization. So particularly when it comes to files, paper, they're digital, but we'll call them paper.
Sure.
So PDFs, Word, any work product like that. If you have a filing system in a physical world, everything that's named in a physical world should be the same naming lexicon in the digital world. We don't call it auto in the drawer, but we call it car on the computer.
Mm-hmm.
And in that way that it is so easy to download things, and particularly if you're in a space where audience development marketing is a part of your job, you might be opting into all kinds of funnels and doing things to funnel hack what other people are doing, and you want to learn about what's going on in the world, or you're just interested in subject matter and you opt in for certain things. I encourage people all the time, if you're not reading it, unsubscribe. I have 2 email addresses, one for subscriptions and one for actual correspondence. I don't mix and match them.
Wow.
So if I don't open the subscription email box for a month, who cares? It was not anything. It's not critical communication. Nobody's writing to me. These are lists that I've subscribed to and things that I'm doing that don't matter. Whereas if you wrote to me and said, hey, here's some updated information for the podcast, I don't want that getting lost with some flyer for the San Diego Symphony or, for a recycle program or the building newsletter. I don't want that stuff to obscure our actual communication between another.
Great idea. I've never thought about that. Separate email address for subscriptions, because I have public, private, but it's all mixed together.
Yeah.
Wow.
And be mindful of just downloading stuff. The end of downloading it is not just dropping it in your downloads folder or putting it on your computer desktop. It's renaming it so you know what it is and putting it where it goes. Going back to your thing about a complete task and how good it feels when you complete a task, in the same way that the end of doing the laundry is not a basket of clean clothes on the bedroom floor, but it's when the basket is empty, the clothes are put back in the drawer, basket's back on top of the dryer, ready for more clean clothes. That's the full arc of that task. The full arc of downloading a file is not just getting it into your downloads folder.
Right.
It's finding it, naming it, putting it in a folder with its siblings, reading it if you need to read it, or filing it if that's what you're doing with it, rather than just leaving it in a to-do folder, which is what so many people's download folder becomes.
Or their inbox. What do you think about inbox zero? Good idea, bad idea?
In my world, I want to spend the least amount of time with stuff that I need to have the quality of life that I want. So if I wanted to gamify my inbox, if I got juice out of that, then I would say go for inbox zero. I have lots of emails that I will probably never read. Once a month, once a quarter, I'll go through them, scoop them all up and throw them in the garbage. It's not worth my time to chase that. I'd rather, email is it's just a form of communication. It isn't the only form of communication. And because I can't control what ends up in my inbox, I have rules and filters running, and I can put some emails some places, but I get emails every day from people who are like, oh, I want to build you an app. Oh, what about this? Oh, here's an investment opportunity. Here's Bitcoin, whatever, right? Used to be erectile dysfunction. Now it's Bitcoin. It's there. I can't stop it.
Yeah.
And I don't wish to play whack-a-mole with it. It's not worth my time. This is a much better use of my time than trying to get to my inbox down to zero. For me, if somebody really loves opening up their inbox and there's nothing in it and that's juicy and it motivates them to do something more better, go for it. For me, there's not enough value there.
No, that's fair. When it comes to, this is one of the debates we have in our company. So we have Dropbox. It's beautifully organized. Everybody knows where everything belongs. And then we have Google Drive, which is a little more chaotic. But there's 2 systems. And part of that is, if it's a Word doc or something like that, publishers still work off Word docs. It makes sense to store it inside Dropbox, along with a lot of other folders from lawyers, accountants, et cetera, et cetera. But when it comes to Google Docs, we're a content creation company. The creation often happens in Google Docs. Any advice for when you have two systems? Because we've thought about consolidating them into one, and we just haven't pulled the trigger yet.
They're not the same. I personally, I don't use Google Drive for storage in the way we use Dropbox as well for permanent assets. And we use Google Drive as a collaborative tool.
Right.
That's why we have it, because we can collaborate on the same document in the same time instead of and look, Microsoft isn't, they're slow, but they're not stupid.
Yeah.
So they eventually figured out, we need Office 365 to compete with this open suite of apps that Google has put in the cloud, because we're losing all of our business because people don't want to email back Word documents anymore. They want to collaborate in real time.
Some industries do, may I just say. If you deal with a publisher, it's still on Word. It's like, what decade are we in?
Yeah.
But anyway.
That's a separate story.
That's a rant.
We can talk about that on another episode.
That's a rant, Andrew.
Yeah.
I agree.
So we use Google Drive for anything that we're collaborating on where multiple people need to have access to the same information in real time. Once we're finished with it, we'll typically pull it out of Google Drive. Now it's an asset, and we park it in Dropbox in its folders. We also try to have the architecture of Google Drive as closely as possible match the architecture of Dropbox, so that what we call it in Google Drive, if it's programs and courses, it's also called programs and courses in Dropbox, so that they map to each other, even though the content of each folder is different but related. They're cousins, if not siblings.
So my little company's been virtual since day one, and we had to create some rules. So I want to run these rules by you and agree, disagree, improve, or provide a completely alternate system. But we teach this to leaders because here's what we basically do. Anyone within the organization is not allowed to email anyone within the organization. We don't lead by email. Okay, that got a thumbs up. Then basically, everything goes into Asana for our weekly meeting, because most of the stuff is not super urgent. So if I think of something this afternoon, I got to talk to Katie about how am I getting from the conference to the airport. Historically, you interrupt her. Hey, Katie, I need to figure out how to get to the concert to the airport. Well, it's not due now. That's 2 weeks down the road. I just thought about it. So go into Asana for a one-on-one. I had a task that says, how do I get from Dallas to the airport? Blah, 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 whatever. So I do that, and then it just sits there and it's parked until the meeting. If it can't wait until our next weekly meeting, it's a Slack question, and the expectation is it gets answered either by lunch or by end of day. So within a few hours, you're going to hear a response to that. So that's basically it. You're not allowed to email. Now, if we're setting up this podcast interview, then I'm going to email you. The team's going to be in on that to set it up, but that's external communication, not internal communication. A text is if it can't wait for Slack, and a phone call is a nuclear emergency. It's like, I've got this interview with Andrew in 2 minutes and I can't find the link. What do I do? Right. So basically, no email. Try to wait for the weekly meeting in Asana. Just park it. It's a parking lot. Slack for something that can wait a few hours. Text if you kind of need an answer now. Phone call if it's like, no, I need it right now. And the number of phone calls and texts we send back and forth, texts a couple a week, phone calls a couple a month, maybe. What do you think of that kind of digital protocol? We're ringing the bell. All right.
I think it's awesome. We do something similar here.
Yeah, do you? And you can vary the rules, but the bottom line is you're not leading by email. So you have that rule, no email?
Internal. No internal communication happens via email. It's the worst. And that will, for any of your listeners, that will improve productivity by 20 to 30% immediately.
Oh, that's quantifiable. Wow.
Yeah, if you can migrate to Slack or Teams. Now, you have to set up the proper channels on those platforms. It isn't a free-for-all where people just, because without a protocol, an SOP for using those tools. Often people complain about them failing because they don't create distinct channels, and it just becomes a free-for-all, and everybody's talking to everybody, and it's just noise. And the same BCC, CC behavior in email then translates into Slack, where people are tagging people that don't need to know about it. It's in the channel. If you need to find it, you can go look for it in that channel, but you didn't need to know, so I don't need to tag you. And if I am tagging you, then I'll typically, if I'm not writing to you, I'll typically tag you and just say FYI, just so that you know that it happened, should you want to go looking for it, but it's nothing, there's no action for you.
Right.
We also, in our Slack, we create a headline for every thread inside the channel so that you know exactly what that thread's about. Working on the MCO workbook.
Right.
And so now that's in uppercase, it's bold. And so at a glance, we also know that this thread is about this particular subtopic.
No, that's really helpful. Any other tips for leaders? Because what I find when I get into this kind of conversation, we teach it in the course, The Art of Team Leadership, but vast majority of people I talk to one-on-one are still leading by email. It's
get out of your inbox.
Get out of your
team
inbox.
Out of your inbox immediately. It's a game changer.
Yeah, it's an external communication device, not an internal.
Only.
Yeah.
And it goes back to that idea of inbox zero. If it's only for external communication, I'm never going to miss something from my team or somebody I'm collaborating with because that's in Slack. Mm-hmm. And it means that it's easier to sift through correspondence from external people that I want to talk to versus junk.
What about texting people? Do you have rules? We generally, unless it's an emergency, we don't text after office hours. Like and usually emergency would be, I'm traveling somewhere and something went wrong. Not like, I just had this idea.
Oh yeah. I wouldn't even, it would really have to be a true emergency for me to text my assistant after hours even when I'm on the road. I mean, I would figure it out and then I would Slack her and say, hey, FYI, couldn't find the notification for the Uber or for the hotel. Figured it out, but make sure that it's let's update the SOP so that this is cured going forward.
That's fair. Yeah.
So I would literally have to be bleeding out for me to bother her off hours. I would solve it myself and then retrofit it, go backwards and figure out where was the dropout, what didn't happen.
I think that's a good lesson, particularly for church leaders where there's sort of a family vibe that everybody's on all the time. And you don't keep great people a long time if the only break you get is when you're asleep at night. That. I mean, I appreciate
mission-driven work, and still it's not be self-reliant.
Exactly.
Again, if you're bleeding out, call 911. If you're not bleeding out, solve the problem.
Yeah, your assistant probably is not going to fly there to treat you. That's a good point.
Nor is she. Nor would I expect her if for some reason we didn't book the hotel or the car wasn't there. I'd get in a car. I'm not. I don't want the delay of pinging her saying, "Hey, book me a car." I'm standing at the curb at the airport. I'm going to get in a car. If there's a financial consequence because she did book the car but didn't give me the thing, then we'll figure out how we're either going to get a refund or solve the problem or whatever. But in those moments, let's solve the problem.
That's such good advice. Yeah. Andrew, what have we not talked about that we should talk about for leaders that would help them? I thought this was a greght conversation. I'm even more motivated to finish that 20%. Whatever gap there is, I want to get it done.
Well, I would, I think it's that thing of eating your own dog food and not letting yourself off the hook because you're busy, right? I mean, I wrote a book called Calling BS I'm Busy for that reason, because I think it becomes, in the theater, we call it a LOTC. It's a vocal tick that people you just unconsciously, oh, I'm busy. Oh, I'm too busy. Oh, I would totally do that, but I'm too busy. Well, that's either it's a priority problem. You aren't prioritizing things accurately, or it is a workflow issue in that there's too much demand on your time, in which case it's a delegation problem. So if you have, certainly in your industry, if we're thinking about, again, mission driven, perhaps, spiritually driven work, there's always more to do than there will be time. And chances are you are both a perfectionist and a people pleaser, which is a potent double winner.
That's toxic. Yeah.
Right.
That'll
And
kill you.
so your desire to please everybody is perhaps pathological, or neurotic. And that's an opportunity, physician, heal thyself, figure out what's going on there that's keeping you in that loop of, they can't survive without me. You might be a representation of God on the planet, but you aren't God.
That's a good point.
So you can release the need to solve all problems at all times. You are a representative. You are not the CEO. And so there's that piece of it. And then the perfectionism is what's often preventing people from delegating. Is by the time I explain it to you, I could have done it 3 times. That's only true the first time. Once I train you and teach you how to do it, I never have to do it again. It goes back to that idea of, you eat for a day. If I give you a fish, you eat for a lifetime if I teach you to fish. It will take me longer to teach you how to fish than to just give you a fish once. But once you know how to fish, you are self-sustaining. And if really that's what I'm about is curing the world, I ought to be willing to invest the time to teach you to fish. The more fishermen we have, the less mouths we have to feed.
Wow. Well, Andrew, I gotta thank you for your work. It's made a huge difference in my life, as listeners may or may not be able to tell. You've definitely got a brand ambassador in me, and it's just made my day job easier because there's less to think about beyond that. So Unstuff Your Life, it's updated for 2025. Got a brand new version, lots on digital clutter and everything. If people want to follow or track with you online, where's the best place?
AndrewMellon.com, MELLEN.com. AndrewMellon.com is the easiest way to find me.
Great. Well, Andrew, thank you.
It's my pleasure, Carey. Thanks so much for having me.